Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I maybe should have picked another name. Like hearing it out loud now kind of sounds a little quaint. But I appreciate it, Jason. But just quick background on me. I'm from the Beta Iota chapter. Shout out to Buffalo. And for me, I'm a co-founder and president of InternTalk, which kind of stemmed from a lot of the work I've done during college, kind of helping my peers, a lot of what AKSI does, like with resume development, all that stuff, and got really excited about that and kind of created a startup and community around that. And so at interntalk.co, we provide like guides, resume guides, and cover letter guides. And then with that, we have a social media that we just kicked off and a platform that provides kind of, I say, no nonsense, like BS advice around connecting professional development to career development. I did this because, going through those experiences, I was lucky enough to get really, really great internships and build the skill set I needed to do so. And that carried through my career. What I realized is that professional development, career development, I might get in trouble for saying this, wasn't like sexy, right? It wasn't cool. And bringing and building that foundation, it really does feed my soul. So outside of InternTalk, I am a talent consultant. And so I work with startups and Fortune 500 companies to build their organization, to consult on organizational design, career laddering, HR, a lot of the works. And so my clients range from Series A startups all the way to Series DE organizations who are post-profit and up to $100 million in revenue. And so this talk, I wanted to focus on professional communication and where you can use it, where you can apply it, what is it, how is it defined, and hopefully you guys get some good nuggets out of this. So before we jump, I'll share my screen. InternTalk, talking the talk. And so like I mentioned, founder and president InternTalk. Today we'll talk about what is professional communication, what's the use cases, the different kind of communicators that you may or may not recognize yourselves in. We'll talk about the 3 C's of communication, which is in my book, InternTalk, of the same name, example emails, and then some communication hacks, and then some breakout nuggets for the room. And so I realized, Jason, I didn't create those breakout questions, but I think the nuggets actually will serve as good proxies for that conversation. What is communication? I like AKSI's definition. It's speaking and writing in ways that enable others to engage, learn, and act. I remember, again, coming up in my career, professional communication was this thing where people use big words and they sounded really smart when they talked. And I quickly learned that a good suit and fancy vocabulary will make someone appear like they know what they're saying and talking about. But communication is much more than verbal. It's actually beyond written. Communication is just the definition that you're looking at now. It involves visual, it involves body language. It happens all the time in different places. And so just to kind of set the tone for this presentation, the first thing I want to challenge you guys to do is think about communication much more expansively than talking and writing, right? It's literally how you exchange information. For example, the example I use, cars communicate on a highway through, left signals and brake lights and etc. It's the same thing. And so keeping that at a high level, think about communication just as that, how you can exchange information so people can engage, learn, and act. Cool? What does this professional communication mean? So like we mentioned, and you guys are familiar, this is 101, use professional communication in a myriad of ways. There's interviews, there's email writing, there's presentations, there's business cases, your resume, networking, and all these things. And you shouldn't really kind of decouple where you communicate professionally. For example, we'll talk about it in just the next slide. I know when I personally get like a fat text from a friend with paragraphs stuck together, I'm not answering that. Like that's bad communication. And that's whether it's my personal life or my professional life, I've learned to communicate in a way that operates on the definition we landed on in the previous slide. I don't decouple the two. I may change my tone, I may change inflection, whether I'm at a party or a social gathering or talking to my mom or a friend. Obviously, we use different language, right? But what you'll realize is the principles of good communication should be there, whether you're talking to a friend, your mother, a professional. So this is kind of like a funny parody of the different communicators I've kind of come across in my life, and I may embody some or a lot of these. And you may even recognize yourself in some cases, right? There's a questioner, right? There's a person that asks a lot of questions, right? Even in class, where it's like it's 11:59, class is done at 12, and you're really asking this question that's gonna take like 40 minutes to answer. And there's pros and cons. I want to set the foundation for the questioner, for example. Sometimes asks really good questions. They're good at problem solving. Sometimes they ask irrelevant questions that detract from the conversation or the goal of the conversation. They may mix up questions and statements, right? And can seem a little bit wishy-washy. You know, when you end a statement in a question like this, you know, that's kind of a form of communication. The fast talker, the person who moves from subject to subject and it talks quickly and moves there and you're trying to keep up, and they may lose people. At the same time, those people are very energetic. You typically find yourself like almost gravitating towards them, like they're like an orbit, and you just don't know what they're saying, but you're hooked and you're just listening. There's the reserve type, right? Sometimes they take a while to respond. They don't like to interrupt others. This is the person like you can go on for 30 minutes and you're wondering if they're still on the phone or if in person was like this person even like listening to me. Those people are actually one of the most intentful listeners. They listen very well, which is nugget a really good form of communication that we'll get to. But also they can kind of come across as like disengaged and like uninterested sometimes, but that's their communication style. And then lastly, you have the storyteller, right? The person who uses a lot of analogies and figurative languages and idioms, right? And soup to nuts and cart before horse and all these things that I don't know when we came up with all this language in corporate America, but all these different things. But sometimes they kind of lose the point. And I am just kind of FYI in a lot of these vectors, but I can be a storyteller, and I've lost people once or twice, admittedly. But those folks are really, really good at storytelling. They get you hooked. But sometimes they almost kind of go on with the analogy or the storytelling, and they lose the point in the weeds, right? And so I want to stop here really quickly because even this is a form of communication in the way I'm organizing these characteristics so that you understand what I'm trying to say and express. And so think these through. This is not limited to these 4 boxes. This is just a way for you to think about, well, what kind of communicator am I? What's my communication style? Where do I see these people? Where do I have a little bit of the questioner and a lot of the storyteller? Or where do I have a lot of the reserve type and a little bit of the fast talker? And so kind of trying to understand, at the end of the day, you can't change who you are, which is actually a big part of our communication styles. It's our personality. And so that's something you can't change. And so kind of think about this a little bit. Okay. So finally, what are the 3 C's of communication? There's courtesy, right? Make sure your tone and language reflects a level of respect for your recipient. There's clarity. Communication isn't about big words and fancy language, right? We said that. Clarity is ensuring that the information provided is organized and the action or next steps is easy to understand. And so whether it's an email, whether you're talking to a person, whether it's a presentation, right? Whether it's a text, anything, right? Clarity is making sure that if you're sending a huge, text, at least like put spaces between them, right? At least put hyphens and break those thoughts apart. When you're writing an email, bullet them, use semicolons, use titles. Even when you're talking, if you want to kind of list, a few very, important points, use those devices as well. They can be used in verbal communication, right? These are 3 things I want to do. 1, I want to present today on great communication. 2, I want to field any of the questions you have. 3, I want to make sure that you guys get really good takeaways from this, right? That's a device. If I just said, I want to present, I want to make sure you guys get takeaways, I want to, right? But just simply going, I want to do 1, I want to do 2, I want to do 3, organize the communication for you. And then finally, be concise. Be mindful of the amount of time and attention it will take someone to understand what you're saying or writing. The shorter, the better. Admittedly, I may kind of forget 3 sometimes, but these are very important. Example email, 3 C's. And so this is a small example of an email I would send, right? That hopefully embodies the 3 C's. Hey team, happy Thursday. That's my thing. I kind of say that. Happy Monday, happy Sunday. Hopefully you're having a good day. I wanted to outline clear next steps from today's meeting. 1, Jack to remove the data from the dashboard. Hopefully there's no Jack here. I'm not asking you to do anything. 2, Jessica to reconnect new data to refresh dashboard. 3, Deshawn to present the new dashboard to client. SpongeBob LLC. I still watch SpongeBob. I don't care. The goal is to send the new dashboard alongside the sales proposal by Friday. End of day, 11/5. Please let me know if I'm missing anything here. Thanks, best. And so 3 C's are hopefully in here, right? There's clarity. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone got their role. It's concise, about 50 words, 50, 55 words. And I forget sometimes what the 3 C's are. Courtesy. It's courteous, right? Hey, it's not like, and I don't know if you guys ever received like an email or a text, right? An email that says, just get straight to the point, do this, or did you do this? Can you do this? Or my favorite, when you text someone and they text back, sure. I hate that personally. Sure, or K, right? The famous K. So it's the same thing, right? And so you want to be courteous in your language. You want to be concise, and you want people to understand what is the action I have to do next. Cool? All right. Some communication hacks. Like I mentioned, right? Use colons, numbering, and space breaks to organize written communication and verbal, actually, in kind of a very, I would say, in a divisive way, in a way that prioritizes information for the reader in a digestible way. We went over that. One thing I always do is repeat someone's question back to them and confirm before you respond back. That way you can point your brain in the right direction. So I understand you like to have this presentation by Thursday, correct? Right? Or in order to stay on track, confirm that the other person understands what you just said. Like I'm gonna do now. I wanna stop here. Before I keep going, does all this make sense so far? Yeah, I'm still seeing, okay, there you go. That's some good communication. I like that, that's dope. Lastly, listen to understand and not to respond. I had a huge problem with this early in my career, right? Most people, I shouldn't say most people, I don't have statistical evidence. Some people are really not listening to listen. They listen to respond. They're ready to kind of show what they know or like cut you off or like, but that's a poor form of communication, right? The best form of communication is when you listen to understand, when you actually absorb what someone's saying. And don't be afraid to ask people to repeat themselves or rephrase what they're saying. And this actually goes into a really, really good point I'm about to talk about next, which is, I'm going to spend some time here, which is communication isn't just about output. It's also about input. Put your thumbs up if you know what that means. I like that. I'm going to force people to do that. Thumbs up or not. Let me know if you have an idea what that means. Or if you don't know how to use a thumbs up thing, that's okay too. So what do I mean by that? So most people, as I mentioned, kind of focus on the output of communication. I'm talking right now. You're actively listening. Hopefully you're listening. But part of communication is like facilitating. I'm in a meeting and my meeting ends at 3 and it's 2:58 and someone's going on and on. It's not rude for me to stop them politely and say, hey, Jason, no offense, we're at 2:58. I want to respect your time. We end at 3. Let's make sure that we wrap up what's on the agenda, or we put some time offline to talk about this. Facilitating communication is a core, or facilitating meetings and interactions is a core communication skill. Your ability to do that will take you so far in your career and hopefully in your personal life. And so what I want to challenge you guys to think about is like, not just when you're talking and excuse me, and expressing yourself in a form of communication, where are opportunities that you can actually facilitate better communication on the behalf of someone else, right? You know, hey, Jack, I don't understand this. What did you mean? Hey, Jack, we're at, again, 2:58, ends at 3. Let's do something else, right? So that's a big thing that people don't really understand, and that's going to get you very far. Communication isn't limited to written and verbal, right? Like we mentioned, there's visuals, graphics, body language. All that has an impact on communication as well. Even the colors, right? The color palette for AKSI, right? The visual that you're seeing here. I think this would have been different if all these bullets were squashed up together, right? And super small. That wouldn't allow me to communicate very effectively, would it? And so think about, again, communication being very holistic, right? It's not just how people sound, it's people what's the visual representation, what's being communicated to me in that way. Thirdly, put yourself in the audience's shoes. I always say empathy is one of, if not the most impactful communication tools, right? How will your audience interpret and respond to what you're saying, right? And so it almost goes hand to hand with, the point I made earlier around repeating what someone says for confirmation. And so we've probably been in tougher conversations in life, both personal and professional, where you have to break news to someone or someone's trying to break news to us and they're kind of just not getting there. And you know what they're trying to say. You have to put yourself in their shoes and empathize and say, I get it. Let's be very direct here. Is this what you're saying? Right? You want to get to the root. And that's a good communication skill because it saves them time and it saves you energy. Always get to the root. Mode of communication matters. That's something else I kind of struggled with, right? Because it's not very straightforward. I remember when I was doing my internships at like JP Morgan and Bank of America, and I was running meetings for the first time and sending emails regularly. You have to know when you need to send an email versus call for a meeting versus hop on the phone, right? And that there's no manual for that. That's something that in and of itself is a form of communication. And that oftentimes though has something to do with how urgent is the point and who are you communicating with. But that's something I definitely had to work on throughout my career. Fifthly, feedback is key. And that obviously is not exclusive to communication. That's everything. If you want to improve in communication, ask for feedback. Tip for folks a bit more, less farther along in their careers, when you ask your manager or a coworker, or anyone for feedback, be as specific as possible in terms of the feedback you're looking for. And that was feedback I got early in my career, right? So when you leave a meeting, I remember I'm someone I'm very, hung up on feedback. And I would be like, hey, how was that? How did that call go? How did that do? And the thing is, it's no surprise when you ask a general question, you're going to get a general response. And so something good about digressing a little bit, but this is important, understand what areas in terms of communication you want to get better at. Do you think you kind of talk too fast and you want to slow it down? Do you want to work on email writing, right? And so be very specific around the feedback you want to solicit. And of course, lastly, InternTalk. Remember the 3 C's: courteous, clarity, concise. Lastly, like I mentioned, this goes out every Tuesday. We send nuggets every week, more than just around communication. We have internship opportunities. We have information around professional development. We have events. and all these things and resources that will hopefully kind of give you a leg up as you enter your careers or even progress through your careers for anyone here who's just graduated and kind of kicking off.